Great to have you with us today. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this very hour, Congressman Pat Fallon joins us at 3:30. He's a member of the Oversight Committee, at the center of a big story today on whether or not Hunter Biden will testify and how. We'll get the latest from the congressman here. Big back and forth on that subject going on. E.J. Antoni is here, the economist, at 4:30. We've got the mainstream, that would be corporate, left-wing media, now admitting that the cost of Joe Biden's economy is unaffordable. EJ will react to that. And then Julie Kelly is here at 5:30 as we look at yet another infringement of your rights here in the United States of America at the hands of our government. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, a lot of updates for you today on the impeachment inquiry, where Speaker Mike Johnson is on that subject, how Hunter Biden thought that he could pull a fast one and demand, I'll do it publicly. I'll testify publicly before Congress. I don't want to do the deposition you told me I have to do. Does that work that way? If Congress sends you a subpoena, do you normally get to react with, I'd like the room at a perfect 72 degrees, please. I'd like a glass of seltzer water, Perrier, prepared for me. Only public testimony. And I will be answering in the form of emojis, which I will hold up throughout the hearing. Like, do you get to set the terms? No, you don't. Not unless you're Hunter Biden, apparently. Hunter Biden thinks he's entitled to that. So we'll talk about that. And, of course, these economic numbers, CBS coming out and admitting today that the average American is a lot poorer now. A lot poorer now than they were when Joe Biden took office. And that's just true, despite what you may hear from the White House. I was looking at the White House Instagram account in the last few days. I saw a post from the White House and it was talking about how great the economy is. They were saying that the economy is just roaring along. They said small businesses are booming. And I laughed when I read that because I was thinking, if you mean exploding, then that makes sense. Booming, I hope you don't mean that in like a positive way. And then you go and you start reading the comments. If you ever want to treat yourself, go to the White House Instagram account. I'm telling you, just read the comments under any of these ludicrous posts that declare the economy is in great shape. And they're all negative. Every single one of them. It's a total dumpster fire. It is small business owners being like, wait a second, I own a small business. I've never had a tougher year than the one I'm having right now. And that's thanks to you. And there's people, they're just going after Joe here. They're blaming him. And rightfully so. He deserves so much of the blame for the failing state of our economy. He, alongside all of the people in Washington who have made things so much worse. And so it really is a treat, though. If you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who feel like you. But that brings me to this next story on that is a lot of people who might feel like you. You may be the target of your own government as a result of the sentiment. We have an update today on what Special Counsel Jack Smith sought from Twitter, now X. They wanted to force the release of information without alerting Trump. They didn't want Trump to know or anybody around him. The specifics here. He was hunting for information on users of the platform formerly known as Twitter. And he wanted to know about any American, or any person for that matter, who liked or retweeted posts published by one of the most popular users on all of that platform's history, Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. Let me quote here from the Federalist. And we're going to get into a lot more detail with Julie Kelly coming up at 5:30. But if you are not, let's just start with deeply concerned about what your government is up to right now, you have no idea what's going on. You are living in a hole at this point. I don't know what to tell you. But if you're not aware of this, listen in, please, and then tell friends and family. It's this important. And if you're a Democrat who's listening, my God, open your eyes here. Open your eyes. It's not a partisan point. You do not want your government behaving this way. I'm telling you. You do not want your government behaving this way. Special Counsel Jack Smith hunted information on X users who liked or retweeted posts published by former President Donald Trump, according to redacted search warrants and other documents released Monday. According to the heavily redacted document issued to then Twitter in January, The court ordered the social media giant to forfeit a bevy of information regarding Trump's account, including advertising information, advertising IDs, ad activity, and ad topic preferences, as well as IP addresses used to create, log in, and use the account, and privacy and account settings. These are all things they were trying to force Twitter to release. The warrant also demanded information such as Trump's search history. That is, anything that Donald Trump searched for or anyone who was using the Donald Trump account had access to it. Somebody like, say, Dan Scavino, the guy who ran the Twitter account inside the White House for Trump. Trump would often shout out to him what he wanted tweeted, and the guy would tweet it. They were nearby from the Oval Office. And so they want the full search history for the account. This is what Jack Smith is demanding. Now, what does this have to do with anything? What does Trump's search history have to do with literally anything other than them trying to prosecute Trump and anybody around him for thought crimes? That's what's happening here. Donald Trump, you don't have to like him. He's entitled to the First Amendment just like you are. He's entitled to the robust protections of that amendment just like you are. So Jack Smith going for this information. The warrant demanded information such as Trump's search history, direct messages, and the content of all tweets created, drafted, favorited, liked, or retweeted by his account from October 2020 to January of 2021. So months of data they were seeking. And they wanted to see the draft tweets. Now, I don't know about you. If you're not a big Twitter user, then this may not apply to you. But maybe it applies in some other social media platform. But for me, my drafted tweets folder is where my half-baked ideas go to die. It's like I'm in the middle of typing up a concept, and I'm like, I'm not sure I have the research to support that claim. I don't want to say that publicly unless I actually check it out first. I'm pretty sure about the data. Usually that's the kind of tweet I'm putting out. Or something a little more spicy, something, making fun of some congressman and how stupid he looks or whatever. And I'm in the midst of tweeting, and I'm like, is this nice? Would my mother want me tweeting this? And I might stop. I might stop myself and just leave it in the draft folder and think, maybe I'll come back to it. And I usually don't. I almost never do. Very, very rarely go back to the draft folder. But in other words, it's a bit of executive privilege for me, right? And that's the way a lot of people use these platforms. You work through an idea, you're like, And so it doesn't actually matter in the end. What matters is that Jack Smith is demanding Trump's drafted tweets. He wants to see half-formed thoughts. For what purpose? For what purpose? Again, to go after him for thought crimes. They blame him. The substance of this Jack Smith attack is to blame him for the events of January 6, 2021, despite the fact that he actually did publicly say that people should peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard at the Capitol building. And in fact, the people who were going into the building were doing it before he was even done his speech. Does any of this even matter? Is any of this even relevant? Well, if it was like a normal consideration of whether or not a man had committed a crime, sure, that would be relevant. But in this case, this is a political hit job. Political hit job. So what else did Jack Smith ask for? He's not only doing this to Trump. He's doing this to you. Though the warrant was first covered in August, the Federalist reports, it was again released as a part of a court order after numerous media organizations filed to obtain the document to shed light on the Smith-led special counsel's investigation into Trump's actions leading up to the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol, according to the New York Post. Smith previously indicted Trump in August on several bogus charges related to the former president's challenging of the 2020 election results in the lead up to January 6, 2021. To reiterate, it was his right to petition courts to take a look at the way these elections were conducted. It was his right. And it's the right of all of us. And yet, he's being charged. It wasn't just Trump's Twitter account that Smith and his cronies were targeting. The special counsel's warrant also sought data on Twitter users, you ready for this, who interacted with the former president's account. Among the information Smith sought was a list of every user Trump followed, unfollowed, muted, unmuted, blocked, or unblocked during the aforementioned timeframe. Smith similarly demanded that Twitter, which has since been rebranded as X, fork over a list of users who took any of the same actions with Trump's account. Oh, okay, this one's for the Democrats in the audience. If you blocked Trump on Twitter, Jack Smith wanted to know your name. Jack Smith wanted to know who you were. That's what they were demanding. Smith and his team went even further, seeking to acquire data on Twitter users who engaged with Trump's tweets in the months leading up to January 6, 2021. This included all lists of Twitter users who have favorited or retweeted tweets posted by Trump. Well, guess who's on that list? Well, that would be your humble host. I guarantee you I retweeted something Trump expressed in the months leading up to January 6th of 2021, or clicked like on something. That's all it takes for the feds to be all over you? There's a lot of people in that category, millions of Americans who would be in that category. All lists of Twitter users who have favorited or retweeted tweets posted by Trump, as well as all tweets that include the username associated with Trump's account, including mentions and replies. So if you mentioned Trump's username, you're swept up in this. According to the Post, Smith's warrant was issued to then Twitter along with a non-disclosure order, instructing the company not to notify Trump about the search. Twitter initially bucked Smith's demand, arguing that to forfeit such information to the government constituted a violation of the First Amendment. The social media giant ultimately complied with the warrant, but was fined $350,000 for failing to meet the special counsel's demands by deadline. In the heavily redacted court filing opposing Twitter's legal attempts to notify Trump of the search, Smith baselessly claimed that telling the former president about the unprecedented seizure, quote, would result in a statutorily cognizable harm, as Trump is, quote, a sophisticated actor with an expansive platform. What does any of that mean? You can't tell Trump that you're violating his rights? You're not allowed to do that? The non-disclosure order was granted based on facts showing that notifying the former president would result in destruction of or tampering with evidence, intimidation of potential witnesses, or other serious jeopardy to an investigation or delaying of trial, said the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, which shouldn't exist. This court is out of control. It is crapping all over the entire Bill of Rights on a daily basis. And we're all supposed to act like this is a serious court. Nearly every other word listed under the non-disclosure order section of the filing is redacted. So anyway, here's the point. This is a week where we've learned a couple of big things about the way that the federal government continues to engage in tyrannical behavior. One of them was something we talked about with the FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin yesterday in some detail. And if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to the Vince Coglianese Show podcast. Listen to Kyle Seraphin's interview with us. We went into detail about the way the United States Air Marshals are now not tracking would-be hijackers in the skies. No, they're tracking people who were in or around the capital region on January 6th or even in the beginning of January of 2021. They're tasked with following American citizens around who are accused of no wrongdoing and who are no threat to anybody. And that came from the mouths of an organization representing the air marshals nationwide. And it's amazing. These air marshals, are they even doing the jobs that they signed up for any more these days? Because I keep hearing stories about the air marshals. The air marshals are being sent to the border to help process more foreign nationals in for the invasion. And they're tracking January 6 people. And they're tracking not even, quote, January 6 people. Just people who were in the region in the beginning of January 2021. They're following them around. And then add on top of that, the revelations here in something Jack Smith did not want made public, but thank goodness a couple of conservative media outlets fought for its release. And what we learn is that Jack Smith demanded and was given by Twitter before Elon Musk owned it the records of millions of Americans who liked, retweeted, engaged with, mentioned Donald Trump's Twitter account. Are you satisfied with that? Is that that normal to you? Like, are you sitting back going, well, I've done nothing wrong, so I don't care. That's fine. The government can spy on me Soviet style. It's fine if I've got federal agents following me around as I fly to visit my grandparents. It's totally fine. It's totally fine that the feds are sweeping up my ideas and the things that I express and assessing them to figure out whether or not they can pin me with a crime. It's totally fine that the federal government seems to reserve this overzealous behavior for one political party and the people who support it. It's totally fine because I've done nothing wrong. Really? You want to take that attitude? Do you realize how Soviet this all is? This is insanity. And the only solace I can take in all of this is that the truth is coming out about it. And this is only the latest iteration of this. How many weeks in a row do we have to do some version of this story? This week, it's the air marshals tracking Americans for no reason. And Jack Smith, who should probably be in jail based on this, sweeping up the communications of American citizens who supported the wrong candidate. That's what this is about. All right, let's take some calls. I've got Mike calling in from Fairfax now, line 3. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show, sir.
Hey, Vince, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, I don't really want to live in a world like that's represented in the famous Tom Cruise movie called The Minority Report, where they had the pre-crimes division, which was housed in the Department of Justice. They had, in the movie, total autonomy and authority to arrest and try and convict because of thought crimes. In other words, crimes that, had not yet taken place, but might. And it's funny because at the end of the movie, it was proven that the technology that was used, which was some freaky precog twins floating in water,
yes,
who could supposedly predict the future, the technology wasn't reliable. Yeah, really. Hey, it's terrifying.
Well, the moral of that movie, to your point, Mike, the moral of that movie is that was a dystopian, a drama. It was designed to convey to you the tyranny of allowing the idea of safety to rise above liberty. That, we can keep you safe. All we have to do is just arrest everybody, and then we think they're about to commit a crime, so let's throw them behind bars. And so that was a warning not to go down that road. But don't you get the sense that the left is using it as a user manual?
100%.
Yeah. It's the same thing with 1984. There's a reason, Brave New World. There's a reason that all of these amazing thinkers, science fiction writers, authors were writing books like this. Many of them predicated on what was already going on in other places around the world. Tyranny, this is history. It just keeps on repeating itself. They see the patterns, especially with these communists. It deprives people of their liberty. It stamps them out. It hurts people. It tears them apart. You can't allow it to happen. You got to stand up for your country. All right, coming up, Congressman Pat Fallon joins us next. We've got to get into the details of what format Hunter Biden's testimony before Congress is going to take. A very live discussion. Congressman Pat Fallon from the Oversight Committee gives us an update. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, E.J. Antoni joins us in the next hour, 4:30. We'll talk about the economy with him. The White House lies on that subject continue, but the corporate news media is beginning to realize Americans aren't doing well. E.J. has the update for us. And then Julie Kelly is here at 5:30, a woman who relentlessly reports on the efforts to infringe on your liberties. We'll explore how that special counsel, Jack Smith, may actually have your name on his list as he goes after Twitter and anybody who ever liked a Donald Trump tweet. It's just so crazy. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Earlier today, Congressman James Comer had this to say.
Make no mistake. Financial records, emails, text messages, and witness testimony reveal that the Biden family enterprise is centered on Joe Biden's political career and connections. Joe Biden knew about, participated, and benefited from these schemes. This is a national security threat at the highest level of government, and Americans demand accountability for the Biden corruption.
And that's exactly why the House Oversight Committee has now sent subpoenas to a number of members of the Biden family, to include Hunter Biden. Yesterday, Hunter Biden's attorneys releasing a public letter saying they'd be perfectly willing to have their client testify, but only in a public hearing. It's created some drama on Capitol Hill. It's not normally how it's done. You do a deposition first. Let's bring in Congressman Pat Fallon. He's from Texas's 4th Congressional District, and he's a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir.
Vince, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Congressman. I will say that I thought that this was a clever move on the part of the Biden attorneys. Like, oh, we have nothing to hide. We want to testify publicly. But just take us through what is normal here. And if Hunter Biden wanted to set the terms of his testimony, couldn't he have just come in voluntarily in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. He had to be subpoenaed. So I don't think that they have any intention. They certainly don't have a desire to testify. Let's talk about let's use the word Vince, hypocrite. Let's talk about hypocrite. The ranking member of the Oversight Committee is the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin is calling Republicans hypocrites because he's saying we've been crowing for a year about how we want him to testify, and yet here he is, and we don't want him to testify publicly. That is patently false. The way the process works is you get a private closed-door deposition first, and then the public testimony will follow weeks or months thereafter. Just like when Jamie Raskin and his Democratic colleagues wanted to bring Donald Trump in and his conservative American allies. They wanted them. Did they want them to testify publicly? No, they wanted to bring them in for a closed-door deposition first.
Right.
So if Mr. Raskin wants to find a hypocrite, he can find a mirror.
Well, look, the January 6th committee was entirely behind closed doors depositions with selective leaks. We didn't have public testimony from these people.
Touche, my friend. That's why you're a great American. You deal in truth and reality.
And it's
conjecture.
Yeah, it's total. Obviously, it's total hypocrisy as usual for these lefties. And by the way, Congressman, it's a little hard to hear you. So if you're on speakerphone, it might be better to talk on the handset. But I want to hear every word. But what we have here is Hunter Biden. They claim that they want to testify publicly. Now, my reaction to that, upon hearing that, was that he's got a weak case. If he doesn't think he can do this behind closed doors in a deposition format, what he's really hoping for is that your 21 Democrat colleagues will all act as his defense attorneys in a public hearing. That's what he wants very desperately. You think?
There's no doubt about it, because I got lots of questions I'd like to ask Hunter. Would you like me to go through some? I mean, I'd like to know why he made $24 million. How you hearing me, by the way, Vince? Is this better?
It's a little difficult, but we hear you. We hear the words.
Okay. So why the $24 million were from foreign corrupt politicians and oligarchs and such? What did you do for that? What goods did you provide, or what services did you render? Why did Yelena Baturina, who was married to a Russian oligarch that the U.S. ambassador under Obama said was the poster child of corruption, why did she give you $3.3 million and then show up for dinner a few months later with you and your dad when he was sitting vice president? Interestingly enough, she also was not sanctioned publicly by the Biden administration. What about Kenaz Razhikev, who gave you $142,300? He's from Kazakhstan. He's the right arm of Karim Nazemiov, who's currently in jail. He gave you $142,300 and you bought a Porsche the next day in New Jersey for $142,300. Vadim Pazarski, who was the CFO of Burisma, who paid you $3.5 million, he also had dinner with your dad while he was sitting vice president. Are these just coincidences, or is it they pay you as the bag man and then you get access to your dad? Just
right.
Amongst a lot of other things I'd like to ask.
Well, in case you run into any lefty who says, well, there's no evidence of Biden committing any wrongdoing, which I did television this morning. I ran into somebody who said explicitly that. And, of course, I was like, are you kidding me? And I started listing off all this evidence, and it was something else. But that's a side story. But here's the thing, Congressman. I heard the speaker, Mike Johnson, lay this out today. The lies. There's no debate that Joe Biden has lied endlessly about his knowledge of the money that's been flowing into his family. That's an open and shut case, isn't it?
It is. He said at first that I have no knowledge of my son's business dealings. I've never, and then they said, what? And then it was found that he actually met with people that his son did business with, because he also claimed that he never met anybody. So clearly he knew what his son was doing, and clearly he met with his son's business associates. And then to sit there and, now we know that his son took in and his brother took in $24 million, and he wants us to believe that he didn't know what they were up to, and that his brother gets a $200,000 wire from a company, AmeriCorp, and then the same day he gives his brother Joe Biden $200,000 and said it was a loan repayment.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of evidence here. So when it comes to Hunter Biden's testimony, will he actually, I guess, under the penalty of being held in contempt of Congress, will he be forced to give a deposition behind closed doors? Oh, the phone call collapsed? All right. Well, let's hope as we reconnect that the signal's even better because, like I said to the congressman, it was a little difficult to hear him, and we want to get an update here on what the heck is going on with this Hunter Biden news. Again, a very live story right now because Hunter Biden's lawyers came out yesterday, and they're like, we want to testify publicly. And I'm like, come on. Please. Just please. Because behind closed doors, it's a little different, these depositions, the way they're conducted. And Congressman Pat Fallon, you're back with us now, sir.
I'm back. Yes, sir.
Oh, you sound great, too. So thank you for that. Hey, so let's talk about the difference between a deposition and a public hearing. And I don't mean any disrespect to members of Congress here, but the public hearings are usually grandstanding occasions. We have so many speeches from both sides of the aisle and not enough fact-finding typically. Yeah. Whereas a deposition, correct me if I'm wrong, but normally it's not just members of Congress, but instead some of their expert aides who contribute questions and really drill down to get some answers, right?
No, it's exactly it. It's the subject matter experts. It's the thing. These staff members are so good when you're talking about the congressional committees. That's what we pay them to do. That as members of Congress, we are, for lack of a better phrase, jacks of all trades and almost masters of very few. I don't want to say masters of none, but very few. These folks have specificity in these particular realms. And for instance, we have several oversight committee staff members who have solely been focused on Biden corruption. And so they're the best ones to ask questions. And they do it, as you said, more in a fact-finding, from a fact-finding angle rather than to create, theatrical gotcha moments.
Yes. Yeah. So that's, in other words, it's of value. And now I will say that, if the roles were reversed and we were looking at some sort of conservative witness being hauled in by the Democrats for questioning, I'd be on the side of demanding a public hearing first. No deposition. And the reason for that is purely because I do not trust these Democrats. I just don't trust them in any format, quite honestly, Congressman. I wish I could. I don't, which is why I would demand public testimony. But here I'm perfectly content with Hunter Biden going in for a deposition first. And I don't think you can accuse me of any hypocrisy here because I'm making literally a moral judgment about these people. I think they're awful. But Congressman, will Hunter Biden appear for this behind closed doors deposition? What's your sense of this?
Well, I would say that's the 24 million and counting question, right? We have so many. I don't think he wants to, but the Democrats have also set a precedent where if you don't show up, you should go to jail. So he should go to the jug if he doesn't show up. There should be, if there's no teeth behind a subpoena, they will be ignored. And so that's the actions. If he doesn't want to come in and testify, then he should appear. Then he should face those consequences.
Right. And so, and now on this issue of a subpoena, you don't get a subpoena early in the process. Normally, it starts with, "Hey, would you come in and testify?" They don't respond. They don't want to do it voluntarily. But you realize, look, this is a witness that has critical information. We have to bring them in. So then you send them a subpoena to compel them to come in. At that point, you don't get to choose the air conditioning and the drinks in the room, do you?
No. In fact, let's just talk again, because we do this on your show. We talk brass tacks. We talk well beyond honest, and we go into frankness, and we go into candor. We have all been accused of things. When you enter the political, minefields, if you won't enter the political arena, you are going to get accused of things, most of which are completely, if not everything, are just completely false. So when I'm accused of things, I'm eager to talk about it. I'll eagerly come in and say, no, that's not true, and here's my proof. Why don't the Bidens do that? They could have cleared this thing up years ago, but they never have. I'll give you a quick for instance. He was sitting there, he says, with his father when he was talking to his Chinese business associate, demanding payment of several $100,000, saying that his dad's wrathful. His dad can be angry. You don't want him you don't want his dad on your bad side. And he said, I'm sitting here right here with them. So was he lying to his business associate, or was he with his dad? I suspect he was truly with his father. So if he's saying that he was only kidding and he really wasn't with his dad and he was just saying it for emphasis, are you willing to give up your GPS, locator information? Because we are all tracked when we have cell phones now. If you voluntarily give up that right, let's find out where you were that day. And that were your dad.
Well, the answer,
there's no way going to do that.
I mean, the excuse here that Biden has basically tried to conjure is that his son is a con man. That's the explanation. My son's a con man. That's what he wants us to believe, which is crazy. So Hunter Biden, it's not crazy that he's a con man, but it's crazy that Joe Biden would basically throw his son under the bus and say, yeah, he was lying in that text message. I wasn't a part of that. But that's funny because Joe Biden was a part of everything, Congressman. I mean, how many witnesses do we need to tell us that Joe Biden was present at meetings that were essential to grease the business for the family before we realize, man, we've got a mountain of evidence before us?
I mean, Devin Archer, I remember being on your show, Vince, like last year before Archer came in, and we didn't know at the time that Hunter Biden would give the phone to his father and put his business associates on speaker. And they would talk directly to Joe, mind you, only after they made a big payment or payments to his son. That's selling access and influence. And in the case of Ukraine and Burisma, it couldn't be more clear-cut. The FD 1023 form perfectly corroborates the Archer testimony.
Yeah.
It makes perfect – everything always – the puzzle always fits together perfectly, and they want us to ignore that. They want us to ignore the fact that it makes sense that Joe Biden was paid $5 million and his son another $5 million, so $10 million plus the $3.5, like $13.5 million to help out Mykola Zlochevsky. They did help him out, by the way. They got the prosecutor off the case, and he got off scot-free.
That's what the FD 1023 form, which is this FBI informant saying, yeah, this was a bribery scheme where the Bidens were bribed in order to get a Ukrainian prosecutor fired. I've been thinking, though, Congressman, one of the excuses the left makes on that story is, well, that was U.S. policy at the time. That was U.S. policy at the time to get this Ukrainian prosecutor fired. And one, if like any thinking person, you would hear that assessment and go, okay, who made it U.S. policy? One, whose decision was it to begin? How much did the vice president's office have a hand in establishing what the quote U.S. policy was? Because if I remember correctly, Joe Biden's countries, his portfolio included Ukraine. So the White House, the vice president's office would have an extraordinary amount of influence over that question. And two, have you noticed that Barack Obama has never come out in public to make that claim? Have you noticed? Obama, who it was his presidency, you'd think he'd be defending Joe Biden. He's never come out and said, oh, it was our policy. We wanted to get the guy fired. Joe didn't do anything wrong. He never once says any of that, Congressman.
If that was the policy that they got the prosecutor fired, this is the same prosecutor that seized assets from Zlochevsky. He was after this guy. He took, I think it was 2 homes, a plot of land, and a Rolls Royce from the guy. He was on the case. And when he got fired, only after Joe Biden withheld $1 billion in loan guarantees to the Ukrainians, even the phone call when the Ukrainian president calls Joe Biden and says, you asked us to fire him, even though we don't think he's done anything wrong and he was good at his job.
Yes.
We fired him because you asked. So even they at the time were saying the guy hasn't done anything wrong, but because you asked, we did it. So why did he ask when it made no sense? Where are the predated accusations that this was policy? Where in fact, were high-ranking American officials saying that this guy wasn't doing his job? That doesn't exist.
And finally, on this question in particular, obviously firing the corrupt prosecutor, which was U.S. policy at the time, that's what the left keeps telling us, resulted in Ukraine becoming a corruption-free place, right? What happened to Ukraine and corruption after that?
Yeah, it wasn't touched at all. In fact, it got worse. And when Zlochevsky, he had to skip town. I mean, he had to leave the country, but he never faced justice. And I think Joe Biden came through for him. So, he's got the evidence. He's got the proof. Another thing for your listeners, for them to understand, is that FD 1023 form that was generated by the human source, that's only as good as the human source. Problem for the Bidens and the Democrats are the FBI themselves says that human source has checked out everything he's ever told them. He's one of their best informants. They've worked with him for over 10 years, and they paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everything he's ever given them is checked out. So that's a highly credible source.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's yet another piece of evidence ignored by the left and their media stooges on this particular massive story. Congressman Pat Fallon, again, with the Oversight Committee, we're always grateful to have you on the show. Thank you, sir. Hey, Jonathan Turley was on the Fox News channel earlier. He was asked, hey, what happens if you ignore a subpoena from Congress?
I think I'd state the obvious, that a congressional subpoena is not like an invitation to a debutante ball. You don't get to just debate when you'll be going to show up and how. You have to show up. And the Justice Department under Merrick Garland has been very aggressive in pursuing Trump associates for contempt.
Yeah.
So the expectation is that they would have to be consistent if Hunter Biden does not show up. So this is not a mutual conversation. That's the point of a subpoena. You're past that point.
Just imagine if the Justice Department was working on behalf of Hunter Biden and his future. Could you imagine what a world that would be? Oh, that's what they do all the time. Coming up, E.J. Antoni joins us. We'll talk about the economy with him. We've got the corporate press suddenly noticing everyone's poorer now. How did that happen?